Behavioural economics on a post-it number 31. In the past few, in the previous, immediately prior to this, few little videos that I've put up on my YouTube channel, I talked about nudge, shoves and boosts policies, different frameworks in the behavioural public policy field, different policy frameworks. And I presented them, if you watch those, in terms of the little three-dimensional diagrams. Well, if you reorder those diagrams to some degree, you can construct a cube. I've done this. I've called it the Behavioural Public Policy Cube, and you can place nudges, shoves, and budges in that cube. I'll show you how in a moment. You can also place other frameworks within other behavioural public policy frameworks within that cube, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the main alternative frameworks in the next little video. You can also put frameworks that are informed by rational choice theory, so standard economic theory, in this cube. So if you wanted to, you could look at all the sort of policies, behaviour change related policies that have been implemented by your government or by your maybe even by your company or whatever, introduced by whosoever, and you can place them in this cube, and you can see then how regulatory or liberty preserving your particular government is, or how much they focus upon externalities rather than internalities. How much they use rational choice theory or they do indeed use behavioural science or behavioural economics to inform the design of their policy. And you can place them all within the cube to get a sense of what your government is doing in this space. So you got the cube here, and the axes here stick with those that I originally proposed in terms of nudges. So if you go towards the origin, the intervention is more liberty preserving on the vertical axes. If you go away from the origin on the vertical axes, it's more regulatory. If you go towards the origin on the horizontal axes, the intervention is more liberty preserving. Is more focused upon internalities. If you go away from the origin on the horizontal axis, the intervention is more focused upon externalities, that is to say, reducing harms that people may impose on other people. Right? And then on the diagonal axes, again, you go away from the origin and the intervention is more informed by rational choice theory. You go towards the origin and it's more informed by behavioural science or behavioural economics, right? So if you observe that, if you accept this construction, then you can see that nudges cluster around this point here. A, liberty preserving, focus upon internalities and behaviourally informed. Up here, B, that would be a pure budge. Still focused upon internalities, still behaviourally informed but highly regulatory. Moves away from liberty preserving to regulatory on the vertical axes. So budges would be placed, shoves would be placed up here, this point up here. Point C, this is the space, this is the region where you would observe budge-like interventions. So not only would they be highly regulatory, you're high up on the vertical axes, you're also towards this end of the spectrum on the horizontal axes, because you're focusing on externalities rather than internalities. And again, they're hard behaviourally informed, so you're at the back of the cube, so to speak, right? So you're at this top right-hand back corner of the cube. Budges would cluster around that space there. And then applications of standard economic theory, for example, attacks of some sort, might be at point D here. Generally they're focusing upon externalities, I think, sometimes internalities, but generally externalities. They are, what are we saying? Usually highly regulatory, obviously, attacks, you have to pay it, but they're informed by standard economic theory. So you're at the front of the cube rather than the back of the cube. So you'd be at this top front right-hand corner of the cube for interventions that are formed by standard economic theory. As I've said, I'm going to talk about the two frameworks that I'm going to talk about are very important ones in the next post-it. One's called boosts, that are associated with, most associated with Gert Gigerenzer and Ralph Hertwig. And I'll talk a little bit about what's called Nudge Plus as well, which is associated with Peter John and increasingly Sanchayan Banerjee, who works with Peter on Nudge Plus. So there we have it. This is the behavioural public policy cube, something that I have constructed. I hope people use it to get a sense of what their government are up to. And that's behavioural economics on a post-it number 31.